Hey everyone, this is Al Backness here, Managing Director of Architecture and Platforms here at FP Automation. Welcome back to our series on government contract planning within Microsoft Fabric powered by Acterys. In this video, we are going to be talking all about indirect labor planning, specifically focusing on fringe, overhead, as well as G&A expense planning. Before we get into the contents of this video, I wanted to quickly recap on our previous video content before we get into this material here. In our previous video, we had covered around direct non-labor planning, which is the non-labor expense portion directly related to a project. And before that, we also covered direct labor expenses, which are the people expense portion related to projects directly. In this video, indirect labor will essentially be all the expenses that are either indirectly or related to the entire company to keep the lights on for the company that will need to be allocated to projects accordingly based on certain allocations in order to be able to figure out what the all-in dollar cost is for a typical project and how we should be pricing it accordingly in order to stay profitable and within government contract limits when it comes to the type of profitability that we can achieve. What you can see on my screen right here is a listing of fringe, overhead, and general expenses that we're currently planning for various different organizations as well as for the entire company. I want to start off by first explaining fringe. Fringe is related to the benefits and allowances for specific individuals a part of the company. So because we have certain individuals that are a part of the direct labor of a project, we need to ensure that their benefits are allocated across the organization that they are associated with and all the projects that are associated with that particular organization. That way we factor in all the various different benefits and allowances that go along with employees tied to a project. That way we understand for every dollar of direct labor how much we need to charge on top of that related to fringe. The next expense I'd like to talk about is overhead. Overhead are essentially indirect expenses that are tied to a particular organization projects are associated with. This could be, for example, rent for particular buildings that are associated with certain projects. This could be IT support that is tied to a particular project, or any sort of project managers that cross over projects that are relevant to these projects. These expenses will need to be taken into account to also understand for every dollar of labor charged, how much in overhead should be charged on top of that to figure out what the all-in cost is for a project. And finally, at a corporate level or a company level, we have G&A costs. These are essentially costs related to accounting, finance, and the corporate team and many other expenses that are used to keep the entire business's lights on. And these expenses need to be allocated across all projects in the organization based on certain allocation methods. In addition to this, we also need to take into account that there will be certain accounts from a government contract accounting standpoint that cannot be allocated. These are non-allocated account costs. So in addition to these costs that we need to allocate, we also need to be able to exclude certain accounts that cannot be allocated due to them violating certain audit requirements related to government contracting. So as we're planning expenses here, for example, being able to adjust our G&A expenses, let's say, for example, we use the function grow by 4% to grow our expenses by 4%, as you can see here. This will ultimately factor into our eventual pool calculations, which will be taking all of the fringe, overhead, and general administrative costs, and then applying them accordingly to each project, which we'll be explaining in our next video. So I hope you enjoyed this particular video. This is now gearing us up for the pool calculations, which will allow us to calculate our fully burdened rate, or for every dollar of labor we charge, how much we need to charge on top of that for fringe, overhead, and G&A. We'll see you on the next video. Thanks, and this is Alp signing out.